welcome to the second day of the Global Fashion Conference. This session will be in conversation with Scottish industry, where we will focus on innovation for the common good. We have two speakers, Mark Hogarth, Creative Director of Harris Tweed Hebrides, and Clare Campbell, co-founder of Prickly Thistle. Can I now introduce you to Mark Hogarth, Creative Director of Harris Tweed Hebrides. Hello, Mark, and over to you.
Thank you, Linda. Good morning, everybody. I'm not seeing any panic looks, so I'm assuming that you can all hear me reasonably loud and clear. Just a quick background, I have been involved in the Harris Tweed industry for 15 years. I have been creative director there for some 10 years, and latterly this year transitioned over to brand ambassador. It's an incredible industry. I still have a very positive outlook for both Harris Tweed and the fashion and textiles industry itself. Is something that I'm very passionate about, and I want to be sharing both the industry perspective but also the wider Scottish textiles perspective. We're very proud to use natural fibres. We've got a worldwide market and a very committed and talented community back in the Outer Hebrides. I'm going to do a deck presentation for you, which will give an overview. So I've called this presentation Crafted Across. I want to be looking at Harris Tweed as a heritage textile industry, but one that not just looks back, but also looks forward. We are over 180 years old. There's been some ups and there's been some downs, but we are still here, and we've had a particularly strong few years coming off the back of the pandemic. Crafted the croft. The croft is an essential part of Hebridean culture. Harris Tweed can only actually be made at a croft from a single weaver. So that's one loom, one croft, one individual weaver. You can't have two looms in a croft. To explain a little bit of the cultural heritage, a croft is a very small farm, usually maximum 1 or 2, sometimes 3 or 4 hectares, to use the European language, in size. So very small, usually with some sheep. It was about subsistence farming, the kind of farming that you would also get in the hilltops of Greece, or indeed the mountains in southern Spain or northern Scandinavia. The contents here from the presentation are from the land, comes the cloth. This direct relationship between Harris Tweed, the people, and of course the landscape that inspires it. Crafting the perfect product, I want to actually look about product, design and brand, and the importance of these elements. Defining our luxury heritage. It's not just the case that we can state, we think we're luxury. We have to be consumed and related to as a luxury product through our heritage, through our culture, and through our story. Sustainability. Both Claire and I were at a convention this week. Many people now think that even the term sustainability has to be questioned. We should be talking about regenerative, ethical, ESG. So I think it's very important that that has to actually look at a term. So in the context of this presentation, I'm going to have to look at it simply via design, what we actually do before we even use that word. And more importantly, in the context of the wider presentation today at this conference, innovation and the story. Every single brand, every single industry, every single product have got their own specific innovation. Ours is very much set within the parameters of being a heritage luxury brand. We're not a startup, we're not 5 to 10 years old. We've got a lot of cultural, historical baggage that we have to deal with, that we have to embrace as part of our story. We can't change that. But at the same time, we will never just stuck with being the same old. We're always looking to innovate and innovate in small ways. Just a little bit of background on industry structure for those of you who maybe haven't heard so much about Harris Tweed, don't quite know what it is. Harris Tweed Authority is the apex of the industry, the guardians of the orb, and their sole remit is to maintain the industry for the community of the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. So even before you actually get to the product and the process of Harris Tweed, we have an inherent level of sustainability. The prime level of sustainability is to sustain the community of people involved in the Harris Tweed industry in Outer Hebrides, which is a challenging socio-economic part of the world. Some of the most beautiful beaches and hills, also some of the most intense weather, where the wind can reach easily 150 kilometers per hour. So it is a harsh place, a beautiful place, but it also has this amazing industry. The private mills, this is where the cloth sales are focused. It's where the process from the dyeing, the spinning, which we want to chat about, starts, and it's where the finishing ends up after the finished tweed comes back from the independent weavers, who are the beating heart. They are the soul of the Harris Tweed industry. They're what makes it even more unique, as I spoke about before. One croft, one weaver, one loom. The Claymore, Harris Tweed is the major producer of this incredible product. The Claymore, as we call it, Gaelic for big cloth. We have a complicated process backed by a unique intellectual property and indeed the protection of our own Act of Parliament. Unique colours of Harris Tweed are inspired and informed by the landscape of the Outer Hebrides. Traditionally, the dyeing process used the lichen, seaweed, and summer flora, and it is this colour spectrum that indeed informs the Harris Tweed today rather than Pantone. We, of course, can take Pantone references, and we can take references from anything. Even in the past, we've had people sending in paintings, design houses in Paris, sending in vintage cloth or indeed some other form of dyes, and we'll match them and we'll create something completely unique. It's a unique place. Some of the most beautiful beaches and landscapes, very remote, very romantic. It's a unique product. This is our modern Griffiths loom. It is what we would call a treadle loom. You power it by the hand and the eye, almost like a bicycle motion. But most importantly, it's got a beautiful complexity to it. There's a total of 1,412 warp threads that have to be tied in, and then they have to be tied back out again. This, by some standards, may be viewed as being, unmarketable, unmanageable. But what was perhaps in the 1980s and 1990s a distraction or seen as being problematic is now seen as being a huge market advantage for us. The handcraft of this hand-woven material means that by definition we can actually call ourselves a luxury product, as we are involved in this slow craft creation that is Harris Tweed. Dyeing the wool rather than yarn sets the tone for this complicated process. We have a quest for the perfect product, aided by skilled artisans from all generations, stretching back deep into the 19th century. I think it's important to state, in terms of innovation, we balance this heritage, but also we're looking for iterations. That Japanese term kaizen is very much in our appreciation, trying to make something slowly and marginally better. Ultimately, the quality control is still ensured, though, by the hand and the eye, rather than just the bleat of a computer. Skilled artisans, as you can see here, a former design head of design, he will look at perhaps 2 or 3 different wool dyes, and he'll see another 3 different colours within them. Working on pink here, for example, you can see the spectrum. So because we wool dye rather than yarn dye, every single yarn of Harris Tweed has perhaps 3 or possibly 4 different wool dye colours. So you get this melange, you get a depth of colour and intensity and vibrancy that makes Harris Tweed so special to the eye. The weaver, as stated before, a soulful part of the industry, not just because of the time and the care that the weaver puts into the loom and puts into making the fabric. But if you can imagine this archipelago of islands in Scotland, we have a total of 180 weavers spread throughout that archipelago, each one on a different cloth, each one with a different story, each one managing their own schedule, deciding when they want to weave, or when they want to look after their farm or their croft, perhaps even, be a fire person or a school teacher. Weaving was always a portfolio of existence in the Outer Hebrides. You were a weaver and a school teacher. You were a weaver and a crofter. You were a weaver and a fisher person as well. And that remains to this day. The mill, in my opinion, probably the most underrated and beautiful part of the industry. We start off with the fibre, the wool fibres there. They are meticulously dyed, and then, of course, they are carded into this soft yarn. The yarn is then spun. And at that point, we can actually start to think about creating the fabric itself, putting it onto these warp beams and getting it out to the weaver. Defining our luxury and heritage. The simple terms tell the story and tell it well. Authenticity prevails. We have a unique heritage of colour, intricate design, and the making of the fabric. It's a process of continual skill and craft. And for this reason, Harris Tweed has boldly set out to claim and redefine the term luxury. Craft a genuine story. For us, this is really, really important, because without that level of authenticity, without stories to tell, then we're less meaningful in the market. Here, for example, we have the lichen, the beautiful, rich, brown lichen on the west coast of Lewis, which is one of the islands in the Outer Hebrides. That then became YC 140, a rich, deep, dark Harris Tweed. When Harris Tweed was at a particular nadir in its 170-year history around 2006, 2007, we had to create these new stories. We had to look into the heritage, look into the production of what made this product special. And this, of course, was one of the elements, this depth of colour and the balance between the landscape and indeed the people involved, the communities involved in Harris Tweed. We then knew that we had to actually take this to a wider audience. It couldn't just be for Savile Row, it couldn't just be for the luxury Parisian maisons. So the first high street brand to re-engage with Harris Tweed was Topman. And Topman, sadly, was the victim of high street across Europe and indeed particularly in the UK, wiped out over the last 5 years as shopping habits have changed. But back then they were doing really incredible collections. There was a commitment to properly made fabrics, and this jacket here was put forward for the London Fashion Collection. We call it YC 140 based on the lichens of the west coast of Lewis, but the journalists that year, back in 2012, 2011, called it Rust. And not only that, but Rust then became an informed colour of the following seasons. So this is an example of Harris Tweed setting trends. We don't like the word trends, but for the sake of history, it's a case of us setting rather than following. It's a case of the communities, the weavers, the designers who make this incredible fabric actually being in the forefront and dictating to the fashion industry rather than being dictated to. 1 times 1 equals 3. Now, I'm not particularly good at arithmetic. I know that that's not true. But let me explain why it can be in terms of brand and marketing. This is probably one of the most successful collaborations we've ever done. This is the Chuck Taylor All-Star Converse high-top boot, I think first designed back in the 1950s. Put this together with the heritage story of Harris Tweed. Your quality, your heritage, and your authenticity. There's hardly a week still goes by where somebody will not ask for this shoe or how they can get it. And it's very simple. It's just the exact design of 70 years ago with a Harris Tweed fabric that was popular in that era. But there is a classic case of, some of the individual parts being exceeded by the final product itself. Sustainability by design, we have a multifaceted and difficult to define level. We have an inherent sustainable product, but we continually have to improve this. We know the certification and legislation is coming, and we're acting in advance. We are not perfect, but we are as a heritage fashion and textiles company, we are on the right trajectory. I think I also want to add at this point, we have to think about scales. Harris Tweed is defined almost like an inverted pyramid. So at the bottom, you have the weavers, all the way up to the mills, the Harris Authority, the agents, the designers, and then finally the market. But it's a tiny, transparent industry. And I do think that if we look at the wider textile industry, at some point, we will have to start to think about, of course, educating on overconsumption, but perhaps more importantly, we have to start legislating on overproduction. Our production is actually controlled by these 180 neighbours. So that's why Harris Tweed is a very transparent and unique industry. It's very much limited edition by nature. Wool, of course, being the fibre of fashion. Now, obviously, Harris Tweed is a 100% wool, which of course is a natural fibre. I'm not sure of the statistics in wider Europe, but in the UK, wool accounts for only 2% of all fashion products. And I know Clare, who'll talk later, uses a lot of wool as well, not a lot in relative terms, but I think we have to put this into context. The amount of synthetics that are still out there being made year on year. And the problem is with the synthetics, they will last forever and not in a good way. Because at some point, if you return them back to the earth, they're going to be there. The genius of wool, and of course, the tweed, in the case of my particular industry, is that it's durable. It will last a lifetime or two, but when you want to retire it back to Mother Earth, it will, of course, degrade. It's completely biodegradable. Other criteria there are listed in these 8 benefits of wool. Of course, being inherently flame retardant, easy to care for. I probably, my Harris Tweed jackets, I'll give them a brush in the start of the season, a brush at the end, unless I've spilled something bad on them. There's never any need for dry cleaning. So there really is an environmental dynamic, an inherent environmental dynamic in the composition of Harris Tweed as well. We talk about natural innovation. This is a new collection that we've made this year, completely undyed. And I think the interesting thing for me about this collection is we actually went deeper into the supply chain. So rather than the techniques of dyeing or finishing, defining a new collection, what defines this collection is the sheep. It comes from the Jacob sheep, which is my understanding of a British native sheep, as a very specific type of wool, obviously predominantly grey, but with some other lighter tones as well. And it is amazing what you can do just by taking those different tones of wool from the different parts of this unique sheep, and of course putting it into the traditional patterns of Harris Tweed. In this case, the large plaid. There's a line check, as we would call it, in the middle there. And just to get that variety, that simple variety of 5 fabrics. Now, this will never be the predominant level of a Harris Tweed collection because we are renowned for and loved for our colours, but it's about the process. It's about being open to innovation, to look at new options, and to always be offering something new. So it's the balance of heritage and what is old and what we are renowned for, but also creating new legacies and having the audacity to try something new, albeit done under the unique and same processes that we are particularly renowned for. This was a collection of around 7 or 8 years ago. It was the then creative director of Xenia, Stefano Pallotti, who is a renowned environmentalist in terms of being ahead of his time. He wanted to create a much more sustainable collection, both in terms of the volume is in here, but also the trajectory of the fabrics as well. So this collection was classic Harris tweeds, as you can see on the left-hand side. But he also took this incredible yarn made from discarded plastics, which was blended into a micro yarn. That micro yarn was then woven over the top of the Harris tweed. The shine to the Harris tweed coat on the right-hand side is the microplastics, so literally discarded, wasted plastics being refined at great cost, but ultimately still being used in the classic circular and creative way, and making this an incredible garment, which I think even then, 7 or 8 years ago, was retailing at just under €4,000. But when you think about the amount of craft at the Harris tweed level, and then the technology and innovation to make that secondary yarn coating, for me, that's luxury. Innovation in the story. For us as a company, as an industry at Harris Tweed, we have to be focused on both business to business and business to consumer. We have to get this innovative story across. It's very important that we do this because we have to work within the narratives of art, fashion, and sport. It's the fashion industry, as we know, is all about what is new. So we have to balance what is new with that nostalgic element. What is nostalgic? What is romantic? What is the story? And these have to be woven together. If you take Harris Tweed itself, there is an intrinsic and enduring value. Story has been continually told in elevated circumstances. And for me, it's the aggregate of this positive visibility that ensures a wider appeal. And I think that is a universal message. Whether you're a startup company, whether you're doing something at the heart of trying to be a regenerative business, in terms of marketing, in terms of telling this story, innovation should not be at the back of the shop. Innovation and your intellectual property, they should be in the shop window, because that is the soulful heart of your business. So for us at Harris Tweed, we have to get the aggregate correct. We have to look back and put forward at the same time all the best aspects of both the process, but also the way our product is consumed by people around the planet. Just on this, I was to look at a few of the partnerships that we've done in recent years. This was a very intensive one, very close to my heart, because of course there are other amazing industries in Scotland. Shortbread, of course, being one, but the other one, which is reasonably successful, is of course Johnnie Walker, which is part of the whisky industry. The whisky industry is Scotland's biggest export industry, 6 billion pounds, British pounds, 5 billion of which is in export. We worked on a project where not only did we create this incredible, vibrant Harris Tweed, but we actually had our own liquid as well, which was matured at the heart of Johnnie Walker Princess Street, which is their showcase, heritage showcase headquarters in the central part of Edinburgh. Rather than just doing the traditional way of looking at Harris Tweed and going for the weavers, they wanted to look at the innovative approach, which was to look at the processes within the mill and look at the synergies of Harris Tweed, how it's made in the mill, and how Johnnie Walker is processed. If the very talented technical team can just put through that video, I would much appreciate it. Thank you. So again, they are just a very modern way of showcasing Harris Tweed, changing the dial slightly, looking not just at new audiences, but also ways in which our product will be consumed in a different manner. Our story will be taken. There is some really beautiful and intricate parts to the process of Harris Tweed within the mill, not just at the weaver or indeed other parts of the industry. So we think that was a great way to actually showcase the colour, this incredible colour that we generate from our fibre dyed wool in terms of the initial process. In terms of Harris Tweed, we operate a spectrum of clientele from the very, very top of the art and fashion world all the way down to the high street. We're quite democratic. We sell to the various parts of the industry at the same price, whether you're Chanel at the very top or Hermes, all the way down to the high street. So we pride ourselves in that we are accessible luxury. And that's not a marketing term, that's just a statement of the way the process of Harris Tweed is. The luxury is in the process. The luxury, as I'm trying to explain, is about the incredible talent that's added at every point. And that's something a designer like Tom Brown is very appreciative of. So when he's making these incredible garments, as you can see, which transition in from being fashion towards art, then that is where you have something really, really special. Whether you want to wear these garments or hide them in a museum, the incredible craftsmanship and the design and the construct of the materials used are always so fantastic. And it's a great way, again, that we have our story told. Stone Island against Harris Tweed. Now, I'm not quite sure about my European friends. This is where my whole concept of Stone Island changed slightly. Stone Island in the UK for many years, a bit like Burberry before it, was a much maligned brand because it was associated with football hooligans. Now, it took me perhaps a few trips to southern France and Italy, where you see Stone Island being worn by a slightly older, more sophisticated audience, that you realise that there was a real appreciation of this product, this brand, as a luxury product, because of their incredible techniques and skills in garment dyeing and design. This partnership from 5 years ago came from my friendship from working with a student, Asim Khan, back in the Royal College about 12 years ago, and we kept in touch. He was a garment technologist who ended up working at Stone Island. So we've been speaking about doing something for 3 or 4 years. We couldn't quite get it right. But we finally set up on doing what Stone Island are perfect for, of course, is this technology, and Harris Tweed, which is this tradition of blending. If you look at the 8 yarns to the left of your screen, they not only constitute red to blue, but they constitute colours. And with that, the yarn that we blended on the right-hand side was obviously the final mix, the final melange of these 8 colours. Stone Island developed this polymorphic ice, which was thermosensitive. So if you can see the pockets and the neck detail, if you went to a cold environment, that would go to white, represented in the Harris Tweed yarns, all the way through as you heated up towards almost a bright red. So this thermosensitive material changed colour as the temperature changed, and therefore by changing colour, it encapsulated at one point every single one of those 8 colours. So innovation married with heritage, making a unique collector's item. What was most interesting for me about this particular partnership was the reaction to it, whereby all these young, enthusiastic, Stone Island, fan club, they wanted to know more about Harris Tweed. It was a great way to tell the story, and that's what we have to do, because of course our story, it doesn't change. It's a heritage story. We have to find excellent, interesting partners that again help to tell both our and their story. I just wanted to finish off here with the power of provenance. This is the most important thing that we have. You have to have a story that is authentic, that is interesting, and endures. And hopefully that's the case with Harris Tweed. This was the 2014 Ryder Cup, which is a golf competition, Europeans against America. That wasn't important for us. What we wanted to do was to look into part of our heritage where all the way up until the 1920s, golfers, men and women all over the world, wore tweed. And that's because we were originally a sporting fabric. The loose weave that comes from the Harris tweed looms allows for sport to be played. So we were the original sportswear, I like to call us. And you can see we made this incredible heritage fabric and design for the competition in Gleneagles at the heart of Scotland. Just to finish off, authenticity prevails. We revived the Harris tweed industry through a belief in innovation, an investment, passion for the heritage of the clawbore. Outer Hebrides, there's an established culture, skilled, committed community, and a unique sense of place. Authenticity prevails. Thank you. I'm now going to hand you back to Linda Shearer, who will introduce our next esteemed guest.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's a fascinating story of the brand. So thank you for that. And I'll now pass over to Clare Campbell, who will talk to us about her brand. She's a co-founder of Prickly Thistle. So thank you, Clare, over to you.
Thank you, Linda, for introducing me. And how do you follow Mark when it comes to something about Scottish tradition and fashion? So just kind of a bit of imposter syndrome, but that's part of the journey. So my name is Clare, and I'm one of the founders here at Prickly Thistle. And Prickly Thistle, this little magnifying glass you can see, is clearly in Scotland, and we're not terribly far from the Harris tweed story. We're more East Coast, but we're based just north of Inverness. And so our story is very, very young. So Mark mentioned something about 180 years Harris tweed story. We're about 6 years, but we are operating in a space that is centuries old. So I'm going to move to the next slide here just to kind of then explain what we do. And so basically, Prickly Thistle is a mill in the Highlands of Scotland that produces tartan designed fabric clothes for women. And when I say that, I know quite often there is stereotypes associated with that, and there's imagery that comes with that. So last night I was just Googling, tartan fashion, female, like they're women, and this was kind of what came up. We don't do any of this. So it's just such an interesting sort of paradox and Pandora's box as a topic. So many amazing things have been done with it. And even though we're only 6 years old, as I say, we've got hundreds of years of stereotyping, but also amazing narrative, potential to do something really incredible on the global stage. So we're a mill, 6 years on the go, and we're based in the Highlands of Scotland. And this is not what we do. So moving forward, yes, common good tradition. I know the topic has been fashion being how can it be for the common good? So we're maybe getting a little sense of rebel here with what we're doing, but we feel like to be part of this common good narrative in the context of where we are today, then tradition has a massive, massive role to play. And just to fill in a little bit more about the tradition, so very similar to the Harris tweed story, when we set up in 2018, for me, it was really, really important to think about how could we bring some real authenticity to the making of tartan in the Highlands of Scotland. And just for anyone who knows the history of this region in terms of textiles production, there was one great mill, which was a couple of hundred years in the making, which was Hunters of Brodam. And I believe they produced a lot of tweed also, similar to Johnson's of Elgin, and of course what we have on the west coast of Scotland. They closed around the 90s. They were a couple of hundred years in the making. And really, they were the only one major mill that existed in this region that has iconically, a form of dress named after it, Highland dress, which is quite rare in the world to have a region associated with a fashion style. So this mill closed down in the 90s, and yet, with the story of the Highland dress and the story of Battle of Culloden and the Highlanders and the clan system, But really, from a kind of manufacturing perspective, in the last century or two, there was very, very little. When I started, I have to confess to everybody right here, right now, that I'm not trained in textiles. I'm not trained in fashion. I actually kind of got to a stage in my life in working in the world of finance as an accountant, and I really wanted to do something a little bit different. So this was a real kind of learning journey, and I'm still learning loads. So it very much defined what we do today over the 6 years. But yeah, so this story of bringing back tartans to the Highlands of Scotland was something I felt like, well, they're selling Highland dress, we're selling clam tartans. It's very much the narrative and the romanticism of the Highland story. How do I do that? So that's when we wanted to bring it back in 2018. But going back to the looms, it was really important for me to doing the due diligence piece, going around all of the mills that I could on the mainland Scotland. I have family from the West Coast. They're more fishing family than as opposed to Harris Tweed family. And I really wanted to understand the lay of the land, and looking both with my head and my heart as an accountant, really understand how do you get the perfect balance of that. So you think about being a new company, you're going to start up, you're very much being kind of presented as young entrepreneurs. We're just trying to conscious of who's on the conference this morning. There is the obvious way. We live in the 21st century. Tech is everything. You can make things quicker, faster, etc. Very digital, but actually I was just like, why? Just because we can do that, why should we? But also, where do the people come into this? And I think what I find most fascinating, and just completely highlighted with Mark's talk there, was the importance of people. And people are not machines. So we do need to work with machines, but they can't, in my mind, be something that takes over completely the story and the narrative of beautiful fabrics. So we went down the route of beautiful oval looms. So we have a loom that dates back to 1929, and I like to say to everybody who comes to the mill, this is a loom that was invented in a time called BT, and because we obviously hear about the reference of BC. What I mean about the time of BT is before tights. So tights, invented around the 1930s, is where we really saw the rise of polymer synthetic clothing. I didn't know that when we found these looms. They were sitting there in an old mill in the Scottish borders, hadn't been used for 5 years. I didn't know how to switch them on. I didn't know how to weave. I didn't know how to sew. But we put them on the back of a couple of lorries and we hauled them north to the Highlands. And I didn't know this one was 1929, what it really meant in terms of the changes, massive, massive changes in the last 100 years when it comes to what we wear. So we're made on these beautiful old looms. We've got lots of films on video and things like that. So if anyone wants to go and see them going, it took us 2 years to get there. But the tradition of bringing back some balance of people with the process was so important. So, and as it happens, the realization is that these looms were built to last, which I know is a very, very important message that everyone's thinking about, regardless of what sector. And when it comes to manufacturing responsibility, there was a time when we used to make things with the intention of them to last forever, rather than building into your model the whole replacement commercial revenue stream. So that goes to the very equipment that you use as well. So they're absolutely beautiful. We're very, very proud to be custodians for them, because there's so few of these looms left working in Scotland. So made for. So part of our journey, and it's funny because B Corp, so we became the first textiles mill in the whole of the United Kingdom to become B Corp certified. And we started that within the very first year of building this mill. Here we were, this bunch of people, we really cared about it, but we didn't have a clue, if we'll be totally honest about what we were doing. But we were very inspired, for me, by really interesting leaders in business. My background as an accountant, and I worked with some really fascinating people doing all sorts of different things. But the story of Yvon Chouinard was one that resonated with me in terms of his activism. I'd got to that stage where I wanted to make a change. I was trying to, the inner rebel was starting to kind of maybe be unleashed. But the B Corp journey was something that we're very, very proud of that we did. Being one of the smallest mills, probably on paper, the least experienced, but there was this framework, and it just, for us, it just felt it was something that was inclusive. So I know in fashion and textiles, the same in other sectors, you can have certifications for the fair wages you pay, you can have certifications for the traceability and the sustainability. Again, that word, Mark, totally agree with what you're saying there. What does it actually mean? About the materials, you can cherry pick, the different aspects of your business, which is fine, which is good. You need to focus on the detail too. But holistically, are you ethical, in terms of everything you do, your community, your governance, and your commitment to some forms of activism when you feel like something is not right, speak out and do something about it. So we became B Corp, and we're really pleased to see other major mills in Scotland reach a B Corp accreditation stage. And just to say so we've left our mark on this 1929 loom. So you're seeing the hand beam there, which is so worn, which we find fascinating that people have stood at this loom and probably, babies have been born, they've lost people, etc. But for the next 100 years, we're very proud to say we left a little B Corp certified lasered logo on there for hopefully somebody in 100 years like me might come along and read about what we did. And so next, so that's how we make things. And what do? We are fascinated with wool as well. We think it's an incredible fibre, touching on the fact that you don't need to wash it. It's antibacterial. It's flame retardant. You've got various things like the Wool Mark organisation, Campaign for Wool. Mark listed all the benefits. We like to call it the No Wash Club without Brad Pitt, but that's all right. It's such an amazing fibre. I had no idea how fantastic it was. So we very much champion wool as the raw material for what we make. And when we started, again, it was like, okay, we've got lots of sheep in Scotland. I see them in the fields next to my house. How can I find, who's spinning wool? How do you spin wool? Where are they? And it was still a journey that we're ongoing. But we realised there's an abundance of this fibre, and so many people use it, which is incredible. Like Harris Tweed, you're seeing the likes of Jamieson's of Shetland. There is a lot of people really championing across the United Kingdom and Scotland, British wool, but asking questions about why do we still import a massive amount of soft fibre in alternatives, the merinos, the cashmeres, was because of the coarseness of the fibre. Again, the naive, not knowing really much about it group that we thought, well, how do we make soft wool thin and soft wool finer? So we are very proud to have started a project, which has been 18 months on the go now with Edinburgh University, to see how we can make actually coarse fibres finer, so we can actually enhance the value to the farmer, see it more as a value-added product as opposed to a byproduct of actually becoming a crofter. Typically, we do have most of our flocks in this country for their meat yield. They're not, the breed choices are selected for the environment, for that meat value, etc., and for their skills around husbandry. There is a very generational legacy piece behind it. So we do not just think, well, we need to make more natural fibre clothes in this country, so we're just going to go merino everywhere. That, we can't just kind of go and kneecap one thing and then maybe probably create problems further down the line. So we thought, waste not, want not. How could we actually make thick wool thinner? So if anyone wants to ask me anything about the project and the enzyme discovery that we've done and the next stage of scale, I would be delighted to share with you what we're doing there. So made of oil, made of wool, not made of this. I had no idea. Acrylic wool is not wool, despite still being allowed to have that on the label. So we very much try to champion awareness and a learning journey around that as a business. I just didn't know that polyester was oil. I'll hold my hands up, 5-6 years ago, until I got into textiles, I didn't realise that I had so much oil in my home and I was wearing so much oil. So it's a very difficult line to walk, because you're trying to balance informative education, positive messaging around it, and you're not dictating, you're not telling people what to do, but you're just giving people the opportunity to make a conscious decision around that, knowing that there's probably a whole chunk of society like me who just didn't know. That's quite simply, it was oil. So we try to kind of push and pull on that, and I think that's important in this space. I think there's pushing on the amazing heritage and tradition and story and romanticism. But I think in the current situation where we are with regards to the climate crisis, I think there has to be sometimes a bit of a balance just to say, well, this is why. It's that iron, you don't say, don't touch this iron, darling, it's just super hot. You kind of have to say you're going to burn yourself, you might have a blister. You have to get the balance of the messaging. So that's one thing that we try to do with tradition, but also being a little bit more upfront about it. This is another aspect that we talk about. This is not our style. We love the tradition of making, slow manufacturing. We try and share that as much as possible with everyone who visits us. But again, this is another thing that we just don't quite often think about. So we like to make it clear this is not our style, and how can we help solve this problem that's happening around the world. Equally, in terms of waste colonisation in the global south, as a Scottish brand and looking at tradition, then obviously it was natural fibres, it was much less clothing in our wardrobe, we were waste not, want not, but we're seeing, we feel as rebels in the Highlands of Scotland, again, we can't ignore the elephants in the room as a brand. We take that really as one of our responsibilities as operating in that space. We talk about all of the amazing, exciting, fun, good stuff, but we can't ignore the elephant in the room. So common good, the topic of the conference. So what does common good mean? It's for the benefit or interest of all. And how do we do that in the fashion context? And I think one of the things we don't do is this. So I'm sure there'll have been people that have maybe seen this in the last week or two, this incredible advert that was put out there. And there is no words for something like this. So this is, for me, thinking about the heading of innovation being a solution, but also how tradition can be a solution. And actually, what path do we go down? So innovation is this innovative marketing, innovative concept, innovative product development. And then I like to go, well, let's have a look at tradition here. And then we look at this. And this is a lady, Mary Phelps Jacobs, in 1914, who invented the first bra, the backless bra. Now, what was really fascinating about her compared to Kim Kardashian is that she made this bra out of 2 handkerchiefs, 2 squares. So the tradition there was very, very simple manufacturing. It was 1914. So bearing in mind, this is before we invented tights. So this will have been natural fiber pieces of fabric. So there is tradition showing a solution for the future. And also, just to kind of highlight around this space, this is something we have found incredibly powerful as a creative muse for us in terms of when we make those. So we've talked about how we make things slower, we make things with more people, we make things with natural fibers. How do we add more value to the natural fibers and recognize how amazing it is, rather than, it's too thick, we can't wear that, it's too itchy now. Whereas 100 years ago, we would have worn it and we wouldn't have really complained the same. But also, it's not just in the making of the fabric and the responsibilities around the marketing, as I say, we're not frightened to talk about the elephant in the room, is that what do you do with that fabric? So making clothes with no fabric waste is something that I just find incredible, because up to 25% of some amazing, amazing, beautiful fabrics are cut up in the pattern room and wasted. So whether that's a polyester garment or whether that's a beautiful wool piece of fabric, there's so much cut up to create shapes and forms. And I question, why is that necessary? Can we not really think about designing out waste at the concept? This is a really important part of how we tackle the big problem in terms of bringing fashion back into a much more ethical, environmentally sound essential. Because we have clothing to protect our bodies first and foremost. So this is really fascinating, that when you think of that bra that came out there just a few weeks ago, and here's a bra made with no waste whatsoever. And for anyone who wants to go look at what we do, we have a B2B and a B2C model also, is that we have set rules. We're very much breaking rules and setting rules, true contradiction, but we make a rule. We will not make anything at all that results in fabric waste. So everything we make is squares, rectangles, and triangles. If we make things for other people, we just put it out there straight away. If people want us to get involved in projects that involves polymers, etc., we take a tough line. So we're very, very proud to say that we make everything with no textiles waste whatsoever. So this is what this lady did with this bra versus Kim. So innovation, another concept of innovation right now in the fashion world. So, so innovation, what we're seeing around the messaging of fashion. So here's a cartoon. We're creating more content than our audience can actually consume, which is, I think, most people will agree. So this guy's saying, yeah, let's get a blog on this. This is brilliant. People can't handle the amount of information. And again, we always address the elephants in the room. So in social media, we're a brand that bravely came off social media. And I just want people to think about this innovation of way of communicating and how it leads to overconsumption in fashion, and how it leads to echo chamber conversations in fashion. So this is the innovative question. Is it a problem? But then you go look at tradition, and then we go, okay, so tradition, a traditional business, thinking about our history, tartan textiles made in a district basis in the community. We didn't have seasonal trends. We didn't have online lookbooks. We didn't have influencers doing buy this, buy that. We did it by saying that human interaction is the key force in overcoming resistance and speeding change. So humans, we're human, we thrive when we're in each other's company, and we get a genuine feel for the person. We have a physical connection, we have a emotional connection. So tradition is, again, I feel like pointing to the solution, and maybe innovation has taken us down the wrong path. So I think that whole human aspect is the clue. And so that, as I say, that's what we did. We came off social media. Most people think we're absolutely mad. But again, we feel there's a point to be made around that, because no one should own the world. And by having millions of followers or millions of customers is not really a good thing. And I maybe think that sometime in the future that will be judged, because I think many of these solutions, and what the traditional aspect has shown us, is that micro regionalized production, reciprocal societies and small communities is really important. We shouldn't want to own the world. And with human interaction right now being the main thing that will help speed change and overcome resistance is, I think, really fascinating. So we are pushing that agenda. It's the 21st century. There's all the social media platforms. Everything's digital. We're going traditional. So maybe have a think about that. And this cartoon, I think, is a really interesting one as well. And it kind of flags up our B Corp status and our real intention, aside from all of the force for good that everyone might want to talk about. I think one of the biggest telltale signs of it all, and maybe this is the accountant in me, is something like this. I've seen this for years now. The planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for shareholders. So I just think, innovation for who? That is such an important question. Is its destruction? And clearly in this cartoon it was. But it's so fashion being a force for good. And I think, as I say, being an accountant, I like to interrogate these things a little bit more, because regardless of what any fashion brand or fashion manufacturer is talking about what they do, I would challenge everyone to go and have a look at their accounts. Go and see what their profits are. Go and see what their stakeholders are. Go and see what the highest paid director got, because I think there's a real telltale sign in that inequality. And that really then, I think, really sort of is a clue to the true intentions of what they're doing. So for stakeholders, shareholders, this is something that we like to kind of, again, a big elephant in the room that we've not done a massive amount pulling out in the last few years, but we kind of we feel like it's a really exciting part of our narrative next year. So as I say, caveat all this, we're rebels from the Highlands of Scotland. We put our tartan on and we're prepared to fight for what we believe in. So we get a bit carried away and a bit passionate about everything. So as I say, interesting topic for me is innovation or is tradition for the common good? And hopefully I've given people some food for thought there, how bearing in mind what common good is for the benefit and interest for all. Innovation is it really thinking about the word purpose? And as Mark had said, it's about ethics. So I'm just about finished there, but I think, rebel. I've talked about it a few times. Our story is sometimes you don't really need to know what you're doing, but if you have a good heart and you really care about it and you're prepared to ask questions, you're prepared to be your authentic self and prepared to do hard work, then I think now is the time to rebel, and the tradition. What I love about this thought that, I got to share with Mark is that actually that whole paradox of the future being so deeply rooted in the past, we don't need to keep inventing at all. There's some incredible stuff that's happened before us. And I think, the best thing we can do is look back and take that forward. So I just encourage everyone to go and rebel, go and ask the questions, go and create the challenges. Don't feel you need to change constantly. There was a time when everything was good enough. So just want to say thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Claire. And hopefully we've got some people ready to rebel and challenge, which is what the conference really is all about.